El Salvador holds mass trial for 486 alleged gang members. Indonesia passes domestic workers' rights protection bill. Now the news in detail. President Bola Ahmed Tinubu has appointed Modupe Adelabu as chairman of the governing board of the National Examination Council, NECO, while retaining the registrar Ibrahim Boshishi. In a statement by the President's Special Advisor on Information and Strategy, Bayo Onanuga, the President also approved the reappointment of Idris Bugaje as Executive Secretary of the National Board for Technical Education, NBTU, while naming Babatunde Salako as Chairman of the Board. Onanuga noted that Chinwe Anunobi's tenure as Director General of the National Library of Nigeria for a final term of 5 years was also renewed. He added that the appointments are part of efforts to strengthen institutions under the Federal Ministry of Education, the National Library of Nigeria, and the Federal Polytechnic, Plateau State. The Supreme Court has reserved its decision in the two appeals filed by the Kabiru Turaki-led faction of the People's Democratic Party, seeking to set aside the judgment of the Court of Appeal that voided the National Convention held in Ibadan, Oyo State last year. The first appeal was filed by the PDP against the Court of Appeal's decision, which affirmed the judgment of Peter Alifo of the Federal High Court in Abuja, barring the PDP from proceeding with its national convention. In the second appeal, the PDP, its National Working Committee, and National Executive Committee stood against the appellate judgment, which affirmed the Federal High Court's restraint of the Independent National Electoral Commission from monitoring the Ibadan Convention. After lawyers adopted their various briefs and prayed the court to grant their reliefs, a five-member panel led by Justice Mohammed Garba announced that the date of judgment would be communicated to counsels representing parties involved in the suit. Beyond Nigeria, U.S. President Donald Trump has announced its plans to indefinitely extend the ceasefire with Iran to allow for further peace talks. In a statement on social media, Trump said that he had agreed to a request by Pakistani mediators to hold its attack on Iran until their leaders and representatives come up with a unified proposal. The U.S. president, however, said that he would continue the U.S. Navy's blockade of Iran's trade by sea, a move considered an act of war by Iran. Meanwhile, it's not clear whether Israel would agree to the extension, and there has been no response from Tehran. Elsewhere, head of Peru's electoral authority, Pero Coveto, has resigned from his post following pressure over the long-delayed results from the country's April 12th general election. In a letter to the Peruvian Board of Justice, Coveto said that his step down was necessary to ensure that the presidential runoff scheduled for June 7th is conducted with greater public confidence. Sharing his resignation letter on X, he said while he had previously acknowledged logistical delays to the electoral process, there had been no irregularities in the election, as some politicians alleged. Delays to the election results prompted fraud allegations from several persons who made calls for Coveto to be replaced and asked for clarification through an exhaustive probe. Still in Southern America, a court in El Salvador has begun a collective trial of 486 alleged gang members, one of the biggest mass trials under President Nayib Bukele's crackdown on gang violence. Prosecutors say that the charges against alleged members of the MS-13 gang span more than 47,000 crimes committed between 2012 and 2022, including homicide, femicide, extortion, and arms trafficking. The Salvadoran prosecutor's office has presented autopsies, ballistic analyses, and witness testimony as evidence and asked the judge to impose the maximum prison sentence for each crime, which could see a single defendant receive up to 245 years in prison if found guilty of multiple charges. Human rights groups have warned that the collective prosecutions violate due process and block defendants from accessing legal counsel. Under President Bukele's regime, security forces have detained more than 91,000 people accused of gang affiliations. In the meantime, Germany has said that it will implement new military strategy as it aims to grow Europe's strongest conventional army by 2039. Speaking at a news conference in Berlin, Defense Minister Boris Pistorius said that the German armed forces have adopted the first ever comprehensive military strategy to identify threat scenarios and boost their preparedness in the coming years. Pistorius said Germany would increase the number of active duty soldiers, reservists, and civilian employees, adding that its guiding principle is the goal of having at least 460,000 combat ready soldiers. The defense chief also announced that Germany will assume more responsibility within NATO in coming years, prioritizing air defense systems. You're still listening to Beyond Nigeria on Midas Radio 90.5 FM at Ekiti.
Remember to protect the land of honor and integrity. Please visit www.midasradio905.fm for more information, and you can follow us across our social media platforms at Midas Radio 905 for regular updates. You can also download our app on Apple or Play Store for convenient access and your listening pleasure. Midas Radio cares about you, and we are committed to bringing you stories that matter.
Thanks for staying with us. Moving on to the rest of the news. China has urged the cities to integrate youth development into urban planning, housing, healthcare, education, and public services in a broader push to make urban life more supportive for young people, children, and families. The proposal jointly issued by 15 departments aimed to deepen the construction of youth-oriented cities with measures spanning jobs, housing, healthcare, family support, and urban services. Measures also include matchmaking and social services, expanding child care subsidies, promoting wider coverage of mother and baby rooms in public places, strengthening after-school and holiday child care services, and making school access more equal for children of migrant workers. This development comes after Beijing said last year that it would build a childbirth-friendly society from 2026 to 2030 as authorities try to reverse the country's fall in birth rate. Still in Asia, Indonesia's parliament has passed the law to protect the rights of domestic workers more than 20 years after it was first introduced. With the passage of the law, domestic workers in the country will now be entitled to health insurance, rest days, and pensions, while placement agencies will no longer be allowed to implement wage deductions. It will also be illegal to hire children under the age of 18 as domestic workers. The Domestic Workers Protection Law was first introduced in 2004 but repeatedly ran up against roadblocks. Indonesia is home to about 4.2 million domestic workers, out of which almost 90% are women. A fire accident in a firecracker storage facility in southern India has killed at least 8 people, the second of such incident in 3 days. Police chief in Kerala states a Trizor district, Nakol Rajendra, said that the deadly fire also injured 15 people, with 2 persons in critical condition. While local media said that the fire broke out during preparations for a Hindu festival, Rajendra said its cause was being determined, adding that the death toll is still likely to rise. In a social media post, Prime Minister Narendra Modi said that he was saddened by the loss of lives and offered his deepest condolences to families of the victims. On global sports, the World Football Body, FIFA, has put more World Cup tickets up for sale after facing backlash from fans over new and more expensive categories. FIFA said it would make more tickets available today for all 104 games in categories 1, 2, and 3, in addition to the new front category pricing it added this month. The introduction of the new category had led to online complaints from fans who said that the better seats in the categories they had bought tickets for were withheld, and they had been assigned less favorable locations. That's beyond Nigeria this afternoon, but before we go, here is a recap of the major stories. We told you that President Bola Tinubu has appointed Modupe Adelabu as chairman of NECO governing board and reappointed Idris Bugaji as executive secretary of the National Board of Technical Education. We informed you that a court in El Salvador has begun a collective trial of 486 alleged gang members, one of the biggest mass trials under President Nayib Bukele's crackdown on gang violence. Finally came a report that Indonesia's parliament has passed a law to protect the rights of domestic workers more than 20 years after it was first introduced. That was Beyond Nigeria, as edited by Ayotunde Adebiyi. My name is Bukola Oloruntobi. Enjoy the rest of your day. Good afternoon.
This is Dua Lipa. Anne-Marie. Camila Cabello. Halsey.
The biggest hit.
I'm down for the ride, baby. Don't you know I'm good?